Hey guys, it's Paul. So I've been thinking about like myself as a Yu-Gi-Oh player, especially in recent years, and considering what are my sort of personal or distinct strengths and weaknesses as a Yu-Gi-Oh player, and how do they sort of benefit me or in some cases harm me in like competitive play and stuff. And it's something that I also want to hear from you guys about like at the end of the video. Let me know in the comments. Also, it's some of this is kind of like abstract in a sense, and other stuff is more like concrete with examples. So as I go along, hopefully you'll just sort of pick up on like what I mean, what I'm talking about, and maybe how it could like relate to you as well. So some of my strengths as a Yu-Gi-Oh player, I think, that are sort of distinct from other people is, or at least some other people, is I am very good at board picking. That's actually one of my favorite parts about Yu-Gi-Oh! Is I like, obviously like going second decks. I like playing, Cyber Dragons is one that a lot of people know I play, and like Grin Maju, but also just any deck that can be built to go second, I tend to do so. I like to gravitate towards those decks because for me, like, facing a field full of negates or like interruptions and stuff is, obviously it's annoying, nobody really likes doing it, but for me, I kind of see it as a challenge. I enjoy lockpicking, I enjoy puzzles, and I enjoy sort of letting my opponent go to all the trouble and do all the work, take their 10-minute turn, do their long combo, and then like kind of like taking it away from them. That's very fun for me. It's maybe like a little bit of a sadistic urge going on in there, but like I really like that. And not just in the sense of like I want to, kaiju your monsters away. Like I enjoy every aspect of it. I like the idea of like, okay, this monster can negate this monster can negate this monster can't die from this, and this monster has like this much attack. So what do I need to deal with first? How can I deal with it safely? When I deal with that, what will happen next? Like predicting those things and sort of watching it unfold and play out is very fun for me. I like to decide, okay, like what are the high level threats that like, if I have maybe, like let's say I've only got, a kaiju and then maybe like Alpha, the Master of Beasts, right? That's like some stuff that you might run in a Grin Maju deck. So you can always use a kaiju and like, get rid of a monster, and then I can use Alpha to bounce the kaiju back and then get rid of another monster. But the thing is, summoning Alpha, while that doesn't start a chain, using his effect does. So in these situations, it's sometimes best to like use the kaiju against, and not necessarily even a monster that has a negation, but maybe a monster that can quick effect pop cards. Or, like if they have both, that can kind of change my decision making and stuff. So things like that, things like, when do I activate certain spells that are like baity in nature? So you think of like Mind Control, or maybe the new edition, Change of Heart, if anybody remembers that, even getting unbanned. If you're playing cards like that, what order do you use those? What order do you use things with the intention of using, say, Lightning Storm later? Like Lightning Storm, you usually have to use it close to the start of your turn, but like it can kind of change and stuff, and you just have to have no set cards in the field, or no face-up cards in the field. You can have set cards in the field. So sometimes you can like play something first to bait like one Omni negation, and then like use Lightning Storm and things. There's so many things, and like I don't want to get too like bogged down into the details in this video, but like that's the type of stuff that like gets my brain running, and I love it. I love it. I love thinking about it, and I like watching it unfold. Because, like I said, for me, I think that breaking apart boards is very fun. And I also run a lot of Saki cards to do that too. I mean, I like my super polys as much as the next person. I like, running, spear mode and the stuff that people can't really respond to. But yeah, breaking boards and going second is a lot of fun for me. So that's something that I really like. I pride myself in being able to really like analyze a board and pick it apart. And I'm not saying that that's like something that no other Yu-Gi-Oh player can do, or that I'm the best player at it. I mean, I'm sure there are people who, are out there like winning tournaments doing it better than I do. But it is something that I personally enjoy, and I have found that I'm like probably better at it than the average person that I encounter. I don't know, maybe that's like tooting my horn too much. My second thing is I'm a very resilient player. I don't believe in the idea of scooping just all the time, like just because like it seems a little bad. I try to play through things where I can. Now, don't get me wrong, there are obviously times in Yu-Gi-Oh! Where like scooping makes a lot of sense. If like time is ticking in the round and like it's game 2 and you're just feeling that you're gonna lose and you need to get to game 3 already, that's like a good reason to scoop. Or maybe if you want to scoop to like preserve information about the deck that you're playing because you bricked or something, that could be a reason to scoop as well, like especially in tournaments. But generally speaking, I don't like to necessarily like give my opponent anything for free. There's this perception that I've seen in sort of the competitive sphere of Yu-Gi-Oh! That like X card beats X deck. Like X card beats a certain matchup completely. So an example is like, I like playing Go Second decks like Grenmaju, let's say, right? Or I mentioned that. Well, a lot of people at like my local card shop and stuff kind of have this assumption that like, okay, well if you use Artifact Lancia against the Grenmaju deck, it's an auto win. And I think that that's not necessarily true. That was like when I was playing that deck more a couple of years back. So people would be like, okay, like I can just use Lancia against this deck and it'll automatically lose. And to me, that's not true. I mean, obviously, like Artifact Lancia is a good card against the deck, but if somebody plays it against me, I love the feeling of like trying to play through it anyway. Trying to, do everything that I can that isn't affected by Lancia to make it where like they lost a card from their hand and I still was able to mount field presence and maybe mount an advantage and stuff like that. I've also done the same thing with Wanderese. That's another one of these decks I like. You can probably get a bit of a profile of some of the decks I'm into, what type of player I am, but people tend to think like, okay, Artifact Lancia is an auto win against Wanderese. It's not an auto win to me. As a person who's been playing it for several months now, I think that it is a good card against Wanderese, and it can certainly make them struggle in certain situations if it's like well timed and stuff like that. But it isn't an auto win. I think that you can still play under it, and I like playing and then ultimately winning games where people think that, activating a certain hand trap, maybe it's Droll and Lockbird, that's one that comes up a lot. Sometimes, playing through Droll and Lockbird can be really fun. And one of my personal favorites, a recent example that I actually had was using Branded Despia and playing through 2 separate turns of being under Artifact Scythe, not Lancia, yes, Scythe, being under Artifact Scythe for 2 turns. So I was playing against this guy and he's using, a 60-card pile deck that like, turbos out the Scythe lock and makes other interruptions and negations and stuff. And I'm playing Branded Despia, so obviously the Scythe lock is no fun for me. But, so I'm trying to kind of recall how it went. Basically, I think he went first, did all this stuff, like used the artifact, set the Scythe lock up, and then in my turn, he used it. But the thing is, people think that like cards like that are automatic wins, but they aren't necessarily. Same goes for like Dimensional Barrier. Like in a deck like Branded Despia, which it's a top tier deck, so I'm not trying to like say that every single deck can do this, but like with Branded Despia, thanks to cards like Branded in Red and things like that, they're like chainable quick play spells, you can oftentimes still get a fair amount of play around the activation of cards like Scythe or cards like Dimensional Barrier. You can chain them and still get like a fusion summon out, and depending on the fusion monster that you get, if it's something sort of floaty like Despia Caritas or whatever, then it having its effect negated by D-Barrier or like it not being able to be followed up by more fusions thanks to Scythe still isn't that bad, because you can still at least like play and float and like make it to the next turn. And so that's something that I did, and then I think, in the next turn, once Scythe is not there anymore, I can still use more cards like Branded in Red again to like do more fusion summons and stuff in the opponent's turn. And in my next turn, I got like Scythed again because, what was it? It was like, he used Baron de Fleur and like used its effect to bring Scythe back in my standby phase and lock me out again. And like, it was like, oh god, I have to deal with this again. But to me, I don't remember, I'm not going to get too into the details, but I played through that, and I just really was proud of myself, because I was like, this is a card that's supposed to be an automatic win against my deck, but like, instead of scooping and just being like, oh, well, can't do anything, I just sort of tried to play through it. I also play a somewhat like uncanny Despia build. I run, what is the card? Branded Banishment? Whichever the one is that like can negate, stuff that summons, but has like an effect in the grave that you can like banish it to reset a branded card, like a branded spell or trap from your grave to your field. I like using cards like that. Not that many people use them, but it can allow me, on my opponent's turn, to play through things like D-Barrier and things like Scythe and like set up so that I can still like recover next turn. And so that resilience that I kind of feel like I have is like something that's a really great strength as a Yu-Gi-Oh player. But I think that my strengths aren't without certain drawbacks. So I think my biggest drawback as a Yu-Gi-Oh player has probably been, so I prioritize, the way that I play Yu-Gi-Oh and like sort of see boards and fields and interactions and stuff is through card advantage, card economy, right? Like cards can be +1s, -1s, they can net you like, if a card gets you more cards than it costs to play, then that's like a +1. If it loses you cards, it's like a -1. You guys kind of know this stuff. I'm very greedy about these sorts of things. So if there's a card and I know that it can net me a plus, then I want to get that plus. I always want my money's worth out of every interaction. I want my Lightning Storm to destroy as many cards of yours as possible, not just one. I want, you know, any like interaction. I want my Super Poly to take as many monsters from your field as possible. Or I want, you know, any card that I have that can like get me like a plus, I want it to get like its full effect. I want it to get like not just the one thing, I want it to get like both things. So there's plenty of examples of this in many of the decks that I play, and yeah, so that can sometimes be a detriment to me. Sometimes it works just fine, and like I'm breaking boards and erasing cards, and I'm happy, and I feel like I have more advantage than my opponent. But I often have found that it leads me to hesitate sometimes. So like, for instance, if there's an opportunity to win a game on a given turn, like, and I'm in a tournament, I'll sometimes take the safer option or save a certain card because it means that I can potentially get a plus out of that card. And so I won't play it then, or I won't activate it or like set it then necessarily. And that can cause me to like lose a valuable chance of winning a game, or a valuable chance of like turning a situation into my favor, because Yu-Gi-Oh! Is more than just like +1, -1 in card economy. It's just the way that I tend to think about it. And so I've literally lost games and like entire matches and stuff from not being willing to pull the trigger on an interaction that's like not 100%, you know, like gonna get me the most amount of cards. So like a quick example is in Branded Despia, let's say. I play a kind of more Despia focused build because I like that deck more. But yeah, like if you think about a card like say Branded in red that can get a fusion monster out and like, you know, potentially get more damage on the board in the battle phase or something, like kill another monster, it's good, but like let's say that the only thing that I can fuse with is Dramaturge of Despia, and it's already gotten its effect to resummon itself after, you know, being used as fusion material. So I'm always like apprehensive about using it again because it won't be able to get its like effects and it's already gotten it, so I don't want to like lose it and then not, you know what I mean? But I could do that and like maybe win a game in that situation. So like stuff like that. I'm very like, you know, stubborn about trying to get the most out of my cards, and that's caused me to lose a lot of games. And I also think that that's sort of by extension, I sometimes will wait to pull the trigger on things to maximize like their overall profit. Oh god, I really feel like some of this makes no sense. I'm just talking to the room here, but so here's an example, right? I've been in like some close tournament matches where like I had Artifact, not Scythe, Lancia on the field, and I could have, like, when my opponent's turn started, I could have, like, used shotgun Artifact Lancia, right? And, like, this was against a dinosaur player. Obviously, it's a pretty good card against them. So they can't banish cards and all that stuff. But something that I kind of forgot about in that moment is that if you don't shotgun Artifact Lancia, then certain cards that banish as costs can be just activated and then your Lancia is useless. So that's things like the Double Evolution Pill, or things like banishing to summon Tyranno. So normally when I see a card like Lancia, I usually want to like chain it to an effect that tries to banish cards. So like if my opponent tries to activate something that would banish stuff just as part of its effect, but then I chain Lancia, then their card fizzles and gets nothing, and so I feel like I get more out of that interaction. But in a situation like that, it's really better to just shotgun Artifact Lancia and prevent certain cards from even being activated in the first place. So I know it's sort of like vague example. I hope it's somewhat clear. It's just something you have to like sort of mentally visualize or just be in the situation yourself. But that's caused me to lose games, and it's something that I've been working on. So, okay, this video's gotten a bit long, but what I want to ask you guys is, what are your distinct strengths or weaknesses as a Yu-Gi-Oh player? What are things you think that you just do maybe slightly better than the average player does, or maybe like things that you could work on, ways that you view the game that like kind of make sense but maybe don't, and maybe like can hamper you in some ways? I want to hear it. I know this is like a video that's, again, very abstract, so it's okay. Like, we don't have to get like into the technicals, but it's just fun to think about. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So yeah, I want to hear what you guys think about it. Hopefully maybe some other people can relate to me here. We'll see. It's gonna be it. I'll see you guys in the next one. Pass turn.